If you're watching this video and you haven't completed Decimals Lesson 1, go back and complete that lesson first. That was posted in Google Classrooms on April 5th and is titled Decimals Lesson 1. Now, the fact that you're back again today is even more impressive in my mind than it was to show up in the first place yesterday. You're here to see this thing through all the way, so good for you. Let's start by revisiting a problem from yesterday that we worked on together. Now, we showed 34 hundredths on our grid here. 3 tenths plus 4 hundredths is the same as 34 hundredths. And we can see that by seeing that 34 out of 100 equal parts are shaded in. Now, there's another way for us to show this. This way is to show it in decimal form. To show 34 hundredths in decimal form, it would look like this. 34 hundredths could be shown in fraction form. It could be shown on a grid. Or it could be shown in decimal form. Now this looks a lot like the number 34. Now the main difference here is that there is a decimal point. This point right here is called a decimal point. On your keyboards it'll be the same thing as a period. This decimal point is what differentiates 34 hundredths that we have here from 34. Now 34 hundredths is much different than the number 34. To show the number 34, we'd have to fill in 34 entire grids and show them at once. To show 34 hundredths, we color in 34 out of 100 equal parts of one square. So 34 hundredths, as we can see, is less than 1 unit square. I didn't see you there. I was just stretching. You should do the same. Keep up the good work, stay loose, stretch out, be happy. Let's take a moment to review place value. This number is 934. Now we know from previous years of study that each of these digits is a place value. So for instance, this 9 does not simply represent just 9, it's in the hundreds place, so it represents 900. And this 3 is not just a 3, it's in the tens place and represents 30 or 3 tens, 10, 20, 30. And last but not least, this 4 is in the ones place and does represent simply 4 of something. Now we can show that in expanded form by adding all of the place value amounts together. So instead of 934, we have 900 plus 30 plus 4. So what about decimals? What about a decimal amount such as 34 hundredths that we explored earlier? Now we can look at this in terms of its place value just the same. Oftentimes when you see decimals, it will look like this. There will be a 0 in front of the decimal point. And the reason for that is to show the ones place. There are 0 ones. We have 0 ones. This decimal amount is less than 1 whole. Now, if I were to change this 0 to a 1, we would now have more than 1. But we do not. We only have 0 ones. Now the place value remains, we still have our tens and our hundreds and thousands and 10,000s and so on and so forth to infinity. But we have none of those. What we do have are place values to the right of the decimal point. So what do we think this place value will be called? Well, to figure it out, let's look at the others. Now, if we see a pattern here, To the left of the hundreds place would be the thousands place. If I take 1,000, divide by 10, I get 100. If I take 100, divide by 10, I get 10. If I take 10 and divide by 10, I get 1. If I take 1 and divide by 10, meaning one whole, such as my unit square, and I divide it into 10 equal parts, I will have tenths. This is the tenths place. This 3 is the tenths place, which can be represented as a fraction, 3/10, or as this decimal form right here, which we can call 0.3, but to better our understanding, we will call it 3/10. If we take tenths and divide by 10 again, that's right, we would get hundredths. This 4 is in the hundredths place. So it could be represented as 4 hundredths or 4 hundredths written in decimal form. Notice the decimal point here, followed by 0 in the tenths place and 4 in the hundredths place. So to put that in expanded form, we would have 3/10 plus 4 hundredths like this. Or we could show it in fraction form to show 3/10 plus 4 hundredths. In our first lesson, we decided that we would use orange as our tenths. So to have 3/10 on our unit square grid would look like this. 3/10. Now if we want to add 4 hundredths, we would have to shade in 4 individual small hundredth size squares. So that would give us 3/10 plus 4 hundredths together is 34 hundredths. And we know this because altogether there are 34 squares out of 100 colored in. Let's take a look at what you'll be doing independently. On your Google Slides slideshow, you will see a series of pages like this one. The page is divided into 4 sections: a place value chart, a unit square grid, a section labeled fraction form, and a section labeled expanded form. One of these sections will be filled in. It will be your job to fill in the rest. For example, here's how we will start. This example shows the place value chart filled in. There are 0 ones, 7/10, and 2 hundredths, which is the same thing as 72 hundredths in decimal form. To show 72 hundredths on my grid, I would add 7/10 or 7 orange strips and 2 hundredths or 2 small yellow squares. To show 72 hundredths in expanded form, remember that expanded form for whole numbers breaks each number into its place value. So for 934, we have hundreds, tens, and ones. To put 934 in expanded form, we take 900 plus 30 plus 4, thereby breaking each of the digits into its place value. 900 for 9 hundredths, 30 for 3 tens, and 4 for 4 ones. For decimal numbers like this, 61 hundredths, we can also break it into expanded form. We start with the number in the tenths place. There are 6 tenths. So we start with that, written like this. Decimal point 6, followed by, there is 1 hundredth, and it is written like this. Notice that 1 hundredth isn't written like this. That would make it 1/10. Instead, we must add that place value of 0/10 in between the decimal point and the digit in the hundredths place. So in this case, when looking at just this highlighted number, we have 0/10 and 1/100th, which altogether makes 100th. So we have 6/10 plus 1/100th to show 60/100ths in expanded form. I will type in this box and I will look to the place value chart for help. So notice that there are 7/10, so I would write that as decimal point 7 plus 2/100ths, which again is not written like this. That would be 2/10. It is written as decimal point 0/10 and 2/100ths. This is 2/100ths. 7/10 plus 2/100ths. To type the plus or addition symbol, hold down the Shift key and press the equals symbol. You'll notice that the plus symbol is right above the equals symbol. What this means is, if I type this key normally, it will give me an equal sign. If I hold the Shift key down, it will give me a plus sign because the plus is above the equals symbol. And finally, in fraction form, I would write this as 72 as my numerator and 100 as my denominator. 72 out of 100 equal parts are shaded in. 72/100ths. In decimal form, in our place value chart, in expanded form, in fraction form, and shaded in our unit square grid.